Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the final episode of Two Way for the entire week, barring breaking news. We might just do a special report. But it's been quite a week. Introduction of two new programs, and uh, uh, for projecting forward to next week when we'll introduce a third. So by next week, we'll have seven different programs on this platform and more coming. And I couldn't be more grateful to those of you who've shown interest in the other shows. And I'd urge you to continue to at least sample them. Maybe they won't be for you, but I'd like you to at least sample them. Ethan Strauss just finished his first episode a little earlier tonight. It's available on demand on YouTube, and it was great. And again, if you're not familiar with Ethan's work, I recommend you watch it, and you'll see he's just an incredible guy. And like the other hosts who've joined recently, tailor made for this platform, just like Bridget and Michael and Megan and the others and the five folks who are coming on next week with the group chat. So I urge you to sample the other shows, and we'll keep introducing you to them because this platform is meant to appeal to a range of people, and just like you on Netflix, you might not like everything on offer, but at least you get to see what's there. So grateful to you for that. Um, Lots of news today, and it's I'd say there's five or six stories that are interesting and important. No screaming headlines. I could lead with probably any of the five, and I could stack them anyway. In addition to five or six stories, we have four guests tonight. Let's see. Three of them have been here before. One has not, and they're all brilliant people, and they're all great talkers. And I'm going to bring them in, and we're going to run through the news together rather than me doing the headlines at the top. And they'll all have the option; they can comment or not, up to them, because they're not all necessarily experts on absolutely everything. But I bet they're all going to have a lot to say about almost everything. Um, uh, we're going to talk about, and I'm saying this as much for them as I am for you, community members. We're going to talk about the aftermath of the horrible shooting in Washington of two employees of the embassy, Israeli embassy. We're going to talk about the president's announcement regarding U.S. steel, which is a very big story. We're going to talk about the president and tariffs, where he said today both iPhones and EU are going to get subjected to tariffs potentially. More on the developments between Donald Trump and Harvard. A little bit of the vice president who spoke today at the Naval Academy, and some law firm developments, two law firm developments, which most of you won't care about, but some of you might. Uh, is it is this video of President Biden running into Stephanie Roll, or is that just a still? Maybe just a still. All right. Thank you for sending me that interesting photo. In any event, let's bring in our guests. Are all four guests here? I see at least one of them here.
Yep.
All right. Bring them all in, please. Normally, I bring in the guests just manually myself because I do. But again, to be honest, and you can tell from the look of my face, I'm afraid I'd screw it up because I'm so tired after a week of this is my 12th hour of hosting this week. So, all right, here they come. And as they come in, I'll introduce them to you. And again, three of them have been here before, but not necessarily a million times. So here's AJ Edelman, who's been here before. And I'll say the same thing I've said to you before when you've been here. I love your writing, and I love you on social media, but you're just such a thoughtful speaker. And I love your gentle soul when you're talking about serious and emotional matters. So it's a good time to have you back, and I'm grateful to you for coming back. Tell folks who don't know, where can they read you? Where can they hear from you?
Um, Most of my writing until now has been on Instagram and X. I've started a Substack called No BS Politics, so you can find me there as well.
And for those who don't know, you're not a bad athlete either.
I'm the captain of the Israeli bobsled team,
Yeah,
training for the Olympics in 2026. So
yeah.
I'm here in Osaka, Japan at the moment.
Two ways thinking of sponsoring you, and I love Osaka. If you need a recommendation for a yakitori place, just ask me. I'll provide it. All right, Selena
My dog
Zito,
loves yakitori.
your dog loves yakitori. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
That sentence has never been
Oh yeah.
uttered on this platform before. So, are you right in Osaka, like Osaka proper?
I am. I'm right near Dotonbori, so
Yeah, yeah.
5, 6 minutes away.
Yeah, all right. Probably some of you haven't been to Osaka, would be my guess. It's like the Chicago of Japan. It's an incredible city with a lot of great commerce and like every city in Japan, extraordinary food. And I love the people and the architecture and the shopping, but really it's the food. Are you gonna have time to go to the amusement park, the what's it called? Universal?
I'm on a very strict training
yeah.
regimen. I train, I come home, I
Yeah.
train, I come home.
Okay. There's a great Harry Potter theme park, and they have also Super Mario. I don't know if you're interested in either of those, but I went there with my family. It's great. Selena Zito is here, and she's one of the best reporters in America. I don't know that we need to say much more than that. Your work now is appearing in the Washington Post and Washington Examiner. Is that correct? Yeah.
Syndicated too, in like
Yeah.
120 papers across the country.
Yeah, and Selena's also written an extraordinary book. She, by happenstance, was with President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, the day he was shot, and has an extraordinary story to tell about that. How far do you live from Butler?
About 30 miles, but my family is from Butler.
Yeah.
They were settled there in the 1750s.
Yeah. So Selena can talk about anything, and she will as we get to the news. But she's got a great story out already on the president's announcement, a very big announcement for Pennsylvania and for the country about U.S. Steel, and it also relates to Japan. So we'll talk about that. Ryan Girdusky has been here many times and is a fan favorite, and
thank you.
Has amongst other things his A Numbers Game podcast. Ryan,
Yes,
it's possible. It's possible based on the explosion in our number of viewers or amnesia that people don't remember what day the podcast comes out and how
The
they can.
podcast comes out every Monday and Thursday. This Monday is actually with it's about the original Sin book. I have Alex Thompson on the podcast. I'm one of only two conservatives to interview one of the authors. So me and Megan Kelly, and I did a lot less screaming. So
Is that true? You're the only two?
yeah, they have not done any other interviews on any conservatives besides me and Megan.
Interesting.
So, but
And I'm sorry, is that already out?
it comes out Monday, Memorial
Monday.
Day.
Can
So
you
if you want,
give us a little tease?
I asked about the evolution of Jill Biden because in the book, which I spent until 3 o'clock in the morning reading twice, how Jill went from a very uncommitted second lady. She actually worked the whole time she was vice president at a college to being probably one of the most powerful female first ladies ever. The relation between Kamala and Joe over time and his staff, why Democrats really wanted Gretchen Whitmer more than Kamala early on in the process, and it was really the Black Caucus that stopped it. And then I mentioned the Biden businesses, and was the Biden businesses the motivating factor for why the family didn't want Joe to drop out? And I really pushed on that issue. And then I asked a little bit about the media, but a lot was on the book because I spent so long reading the book, and I'm a slow reader, that I wanted to ask about the book. And I'm a huge fan of Selena Zito. So
do you guys know each other?
no, I've never met her, but I do DM her occasionally. And I'm what?
But you do, and my daughter won school board.
And her daughter's running for school board, and my PAC is hoping to support her daughter. So
that's Did you make that happen, or that happened organically?
No, I saw her tweet about it, and I said, Selena, I want to support your daughter. How do I make that happen? And we still haven't made it happen, but we will make it happen. But we haven't made it happen yet.
So Ryan, for those you don't know, besides being a intrepid podcaster, also runs the largest super PAC in the country.
Largest Republicans for local government in the country. It's the only national super PAC for school board candidates. We've been around since 2021. We've done probably close to like 700 or 800 school board races nationwide since then, and we do them all across the country. And I know more about education policy than I ever thought I would. But it's fascinating, and when you see how quickly local government can change things when people who are passionate are involved, it's really it makes you excited about politics, considering everything else takes so long.
JC, you don't know this because it's your first time here, but I never read the chat, but I do glance at it. And I just saw somebody ask Ryan a question, which I'm going to ask you. What's your one-loss record? How often do your candidates win?
Wisconsin, we won 75%. We actually got our ass beaten in Texas because they held elections on a Saturday, which no one showed up for except for teachers. We did Wisconsin was 75% win, was our last big state. We did like 40 races in Wisconsin. So
now I will say, and we don't need to dig into it, but it's a little misleading to ask any political giver what their one-loss record is, because some bet on long shots and some just bet safe. So we do a mix.
I mean, that's ultimately that whenever we lose, the teachers union will bring up our win-loss record. So we do pad our numbers sometimes, but we sometimes take long shots and then we win. So we've won basically every single school district around the Dallas suburb area. We've won, and all of York County, I think, except for one school district, we've won, York County, Pennsylvania. So we have some big wins, and we've been really proud of it. Miami-Dade, Florida, we won. They flipped that school board. So we've done some big victories.
Here's two questions I don't want you to answer. I'm just asking them rhetorically. One, why you had to read the book twice, and two, why you didn't have Jake Tapper on, but maybe we'll get to those later. And AJ has written two extraordinarily bold and clear pieces about Joe Biden and his health, which we'll get to because they're extraordinary. People have stuff to say about it. Now, Mr. Glick, thank you for waiting patiently and thank you for being here. You are the CEO of the Commit Foundation. So let's start there. What does the Commit Foundation do, and what's its history?
The Commit Foundation started in 2012. I've only been the CEO for about 18 months now. And what it does is it helps high potential veterans, spouses, and members of the intelligence community and members of the Five Eyes allies, so Australia, UK, Canada, New Zealand, transition from a life of service to a new life of service. So how do we help individuals with identity, purpose, and community after the uniform comes off and their service to that portion of the nation has stopped? And how do we help them transform who they are, what's important to them, and the people that they do it with, so that they can continue to have impact after service?
And you're saying you help Americans as well as people in the four other of the Five Eyes?
We do.
Yeah. So you're an international organization, and what do you do for them to help them make that transition?
So it's really interesting. We use a transformative learning methodology where they first do a lot of reflection about values and what's important to them and how they're thinking about life. It's incredibly disoriented. I did 20 years, 11 combat tours, and when you leave, who are you? You know, what do you do now? You had such a clear purpose before. Now, okay, what do you do? And you lose your people immediately. Like the day you leave service, you lose all three of those things. So we use a reflective process for some asynchronous learning. Then we invest in them about $25,000 per veteran, spouse, per individual, where we're getting them ICF certified coaches. We're, connecting them on very large scale, kind of our network, which is very robust, so that they don't have to start at square one. They can literally transition, and we serve incredibly talented individuals. I mean, forget most of the special operations community. So SEALs, Delta, Rangers, but we have Top Gun pilots, nuclear submarine commanders. We have these incredible studs, and they shouldn't be lost and have to start at the ground floor. So we introduce them to the right people. We believe that relationships are more important than resumes. And so we really focus on how do we help them, think about and design their next chapter, right? I mean, for so many of us, when we leave, we've been told, like, you'll never do anything as cool as you did in the military, and you'll never meet anybody as great as you did in the military. And both of those are not true. I mean, they're good for retention, but I meet people every day that I think are amazing that never thought about putting on a uniform. And I do some really cool things. And our one requirement for them, everything is free. We cover everything. Our one requirement is they must continue to have impact. They must continue to serve. One of the things we say is we don't create civilians, we create citizens. Civilians consume, citizens contribute. So you went from a civilian to be a warrior. Now you're going to go from being a warrior to being a citizen. And, I think our nation right now kind of needs more of those types of people. So we're very, very proud of helping these people, make that transition and really transform who they are to become the people that they want to be and the people that the world needs.
Extraordinary. We're going to talk more about Commit at the end of the program, and you can find out if you'd like to be part of it in helping how you can do it. So here's what we'll do. I'm gonna run through the news. I'll do a little read of stuff, maybe show some video, and then the four of you can comment as you wish. And I may call on one of you because I know you want to talk. But if you want to pass on any topic, you don't need to weigh in on everything. And then, of course, we'll get to your questions. So if you'd like to be a part of the conversation, please raise your hand if you're here on the two-way platform. If you're watching on X or YouTube, don't raise your hand, but also don't put smack in the chat. And everything we do here is always infused with our sense of peace, love, and understanding. The presumption of grace to all, particularly important on this first topic. I've stopped looking at pictures of those two beautiful young people from the Israeli embassy because I cry every time, and it's not great to cry and host. But I particularly want to hear from AJ on this because it's such an issue so close to his heart. Both the murder of those two people, but also how we think about how this can be used as a moment to, particularly the American left, pro-Hamas, anti-Israeli, in some cases anti-Jew sensibilities in the United States. What can we do here? And I've said all week, anybody who speaks out about this should be praised and embraced and not reminded of things they've said in the past, because this is an opportunity to try to bring the American people who have made their lot with Hamas back into the community of sanity. So a few headlines. Number one, please. This is from the Washington Post. For U.S. Jews, D.C. museum killings deep in resolve and fear. I think that's right. Number two, this is the New York Times. Pro-Palestinian movement faces an uncertain path after D.C. attack. Activists who are already being scrutinized could face further pushback. And number three, this is also the Washington Post. White House uses shooting of D.C. Jews to focus on campus anti-Semitism. So, AJ, as the week ends and we all try to make sense of it, what are your thoughts about what can be done now to honor the senseless death of those two beautiful people?
I think that when it comes to this particular case, there's a lot of trimming around the edges on the case itself. So even some of those headlines they point towards campus anti-Semitism. They point towards the Israeli identity of the victims. I think what struck me very much in the immediate reporting of the shooting is that in other racially motivated shootings, the place of employment of where people worked, if it was not a motivating factor for the shooting, was of no consequence in the reporting. There was no indication whatsoever that this individual who shot them knew that they worked at the Israeli embassy. He bought a ticket for a Jewish event for young Jewish professionals. It was a diplomat's night, so they could have worked at the Algerian embassy, any one of the embassies. The fact that they happened to work at the Israeli embassy was a complete coincidence. But it was framed as such and thus transformed from something that was racially motivated or Jew motivated to something that could be seen as something politically principled or political violence. In that, there's been, again, a lot of deflection onto the wider conflict of Israel-Palestine. This is a problem that I think that we should focus on in terms of violence in the United States directed at people that not only do you disagree with, so that is touching on, if you're going to go to the political sense, at least to go towards a domestic political issue, but more so an issue of erasing the Jewish identity from this crime is part of a larger issue that I don't love talking about anti-Semitism. I mean, I think anti-Semitism is a bit of a trap because it means so many different things to so many different people. It's very hard to define it. But I think when you say how do we deal with the aftermath of this, or how do we honor these individuals, I think that a lot of lies or a lot of mistruths are echoed and parroted nowadays, including by the media. And I think the big one this week was the 14,000 babies. Right? The 14,000 babies that were supposedly supposed to just drop dead in 48 hours in Gaza. It was a misunderstanding of a statistical extrapolation over a year's worth. If there was no aid whatsoever allowed into Gaza, the 48 hours and 14,000 people dying, it just had no basis in reality, no basis in fact whatsoever. And it was parroted. It was wall-to-wall coverage. So the extension of that is that it's kind of like what we saw with the violence against Trump, which is if you say that Trump is Hitler, you're morally obligated to go kill Hitler, right? And if you're going to paint people who are I guess the extension of the Jewish state is Jews, people who are evil, it somewhat creates in some people's minds an excuse to do evil against people that you think are evil. I think in the broader context, there needs to be some responsibility as to how we approach the what we portray as truths. This clearly was not a truth. The genocide, there's a very clear definition of genocide. Israel's not committing genocide, right? But that's being parroted over and over and over again. And it's part of a larger issue of just of saying things that we take no responsibility in. I'd say the last thing is there's a lot of just asking questions in the culture now, in the pop culture, both the right and the left, right? There's conspiracy theories, and then there's conspiracies, right? We can say that with, let's say, Jake Tapper's book. There's a lot of evidence to the conspiracy. We'll go into Joe Biden, who knew what and when. That's a conspiracy because it's rooted in factual reporting. A conspiracy theory is when you're just talking about, I just want answers. I don't know the answer, but what I'm being told can't be right. I just want answers. It's a cheap way of trying to discredit actual truth to just throw things out. And when it comes to Israel, almost all talk is rooted in, I just want answers, right? I don't know. It's like the Dave Smith thing when he was on Joe Rogan. Dave Smith knows nothing about the conflict, but he just wants answers.
Right.
And it creates an echo chamber for which people develop some really dangerous ideas. So I think that's really when I say we're trimming around the edges, we're not talking about the conversations we need to have.
Yeah. Let me ask you one quick follow-up, and then I want to see who else wants to get in on this topic, and then we'll move to another. The only thing you said that I didn't understand and surprised me was you said people have different definitions of anti-Semitism. Isn't the only definition hatred of Jews?
Well, so two things in this particular report. The line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism was exposed as non-existent in this crime, right? Because all the reporting afterward just went to their Israeli identity and didn't touch. He shot these people because they were Jews,
or he thought
and shouted "Free Palestine."
He thought they were Jews.
He thought they were Jews. He showed up at a Jewish event to shoot Jews, right? He put 21 bullets in Jews. In people who he thought were Jews, and shouted "Free Palestine" for it. And the media ran with their Israeli diplomats. We could see that the line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism is just not there for the most part. But a lot of people still try to make the distinction, right? So what people think is hatred against Jews, in their minds many times, I'm not a hater. I don't hate Jews. I just happen to think that they're committing a genocide without knowing what genocide is, without understanding the war, with obsessing over it constantly. If you were to ask AOC if she's an anti-Semite, she probably doesn't think she's an anti-Semite, but she says a lot of anti-Semitic stuff, right? So when I say that, it's a little less easy to define than, let's say, anti-Black hatred, right? Do you hate blacks? You hate blacks, right? But if you have anti-Semitic tropes, if you hold anti-Semitic beliefs, a lot of times you don't think that you're anti-Semitic.
Right. Okay. We have tons of topics to get to, so don't feel compelled to weigh in. But do any of the three of you want to weigh in on what AJ said or the events of the week? Selena.
Yeah, I would like to. First of all, to your point about echoing the 14,000 dead babies, I mean, and it just kept getting mileage. My own congresswoman was someone that repeated that, Congresswoman Summerlee. She's commented on it and retweeted it. But more importantly, I think I just want to talk about the psyche of the Jewish people in the middle of the country. I live in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was the site of the worst massacre of Jews in our country. 11 congregants were shot down. I happened to have the scanner on that day, so I showed up at the scene while the shooting was still going on. It was horrific. But that neighborhood of Squirrel Hill, which is a traditional Jewish neighborhood, has been pummeled with graffiti and flyers. And just the day before the shooting in Washington, D.C., there were, this is how sophisticated they're getting and how much they want to make sure this sticks. They put these anti-Semitic flyers in plastic bags and put corn kernels in it, so that when they threw them at the doors of the home and they threw them at people, that they didn't fly away. They wanted to make sure that they saw them. And they threw it all throughout the neighborhood, and they were screaming pretty vile anti-Semitic stuff at the people while they were doing it. So my larger point is, this should not be happening in our country. And even, the murders are horrific, but the constant intimidation and fear and terror that we are doing to our Jewish communities. And I'm based on the statistics I've seen, the increase in attacks or terrorist threats against Jewish people has tripled since October 7th.
Ryan or JC?
I would get canceled if I said my actual opinion right now, so I'm going to keep it to myself because this is really making my blood boil, and I'm not thinking as clearly as I should.
Okay, JC.
Yeah, look, I think what's tragic about the loss of this life is that we're not talking about, as AJ said, the domestic part of this, which is, hold on, we can all have opinions, and two things can be true: the right to self-defense and trying not to harm civilians in combat. That is a thing that we can all have a discussion about. What can't be allowed is this idea that, and we've allowed this protesting this to create a target, as opposed to the target of the politics, the policy, what's happening to individuals. And so I actually, AJ, I see it, anti-Semitism to me is very, very clear. If you do not like Jews, you are an anti-Semite. If you don't like somebody because of their culture or their religion, much like if you didn't like Black people, you would be racist. If you didn't like Hispanics, you would be racist. And the idea that somehow, and I'm here in New York, and the idea that it didn't even get covered until much later in the day. We weren't talking about it. And then it became, well, they were from the embassy, as opposed to these were two innocent kids who had nothing to do with anything that's going over there. And you look at the protests, and I'm fortunate enough, I go to Columbia for my doctorate. My wife is at Columbia as well. We have not been impacted by what goes on there. But I know for sure that the narrative and the verbiage that they are using is incredibly dangerous. And, free speech is free speech, and we must be thoughtful and careful with it, especially with young people. We have to talk to them about, hey, your prefrontal cortex really isn't fully developed. Maybe you need to be a little bit more thoughtful about this. And I think that what we've done is we've allowed this, and even the reporting that I'm seeing is not as, if this was anyone else, the entire country would be up in arms. And we are not giving this the attention of, these two people were targeted because of their religion or their culture. And that can't be allowed in the United States.
Yeah. All right. We could talk about this all night. I want to get at least two more topics in before we bring in the community and talk a little bit more to JC. So let's go to steel. For those of you who don't know, during the Biden administration, a Japanese firm wanted to buy one of the great American iconic industrial companies, U.S. Steel, and a lot of cross currents here about whether that was good for America. One question was, what would it do to the number of jobs at U.S. Steel? Another question was, who would control the company? And although Japan is, of course, a great ally of the United States, there was some concern about foreign ownership of this company. And the Biden administration, this thing called CFIUS that investigates foreign attempts by foreign companies to buy American companies, decided this was not a good deal for the United States. Really complicated, and every politician in Pennsylvania had to say what they thought should happen. And as the Biden administration ended, basically the deal was probably dead, but the two companies were still trying to figure it out. A third company trying to figure out if they could be involved. So, Selena, explain to folks what happened today and why it's significant. And as you do, we'll put up the headline from your piece.
Yeah, today was a really big day, not only economically, but I also think it has a political, cultural impact as well. There was a deal announced by President Trump between Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel. And the details are in my story. There are a lot of details, but the short version is there's going to be Nippon is investing $14 billion into the plants in the Mon Valley. The Mon Valley is an historic steel part of the steel industry in Western Pennsylvania. There are 3 plants. There's Clairton, Irvin, and Braddock. And there will be more investments in other plants. There's plants in Arkansas, in Fairless Hills, in Bucks County, Gary, Indiana, and I think Minnesota. And so this is a big deal because U.S. Steel was not going to did not have the assets to reinvest in their plants, which meant that they were going to decommission them eventually. That was announced in 2019. And that not only would take away this sort of culture and tradition that began in Western Pennsylvania in 1902, actually 1856, but 1902 was the year that U.S. Steel was formed. And it sort of reverses what happened in 1977 under Jimmy Carter. On September 19th, 1977. It's called Black Monday around here. It's not something that anyone forgets because 10 to 15,000 people lost their jobs all in one day. And Carter refused to meet with the people that came down to talk to him about ways to try to save the industry. This, I don't think people understand how significant this is. This takes the working class, which has been moving towards Republican Party since that moment, and really is just about over the line in the 2024 presidential election. And it permanently places them in the Republican Party for at least a decade. And that has a lot to do with having the working man and working woman's back. These are, there are young people. I was just in the plant about a month ago. There are young people that are working in the plant that walk out of either a trade school or their shop class in high school, making 6 figures. Where does that money go? Well, that money keeps them living near their family. That money reinvests in the community because they buy houses there, but they also spend their money. And this isn't just going to maintain the jobs. This is going to grow at least 10,000 jobs at each plant. So it's a really, really big deal.
Ryan, questions for Selena if you have it.
Will this, I mentioned the $14 billion. What does that look like when it comes to the number of jobs? And is there any security in the respect of making sure those jobs don't go to visa holders or don't go to people to be imported? Because sometimes there are restrictions on certain things. That would be a question I would have.
Sure. So I don't know about with the visa holders. Although I suspect there's plenty of people that live around the plant that are just like ready to work there, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are coveted jobs.
Right. That's often the case, but that doesn't stop. That
Right.
didn't stop people from trying to import new workers for cheaper labor. So that's why I want to make sure that American workers are protected.
So yes, American workers are protected. Americans also have to have the dominant number of board members. The CEO has to be an American. So it's all in the story. If I talked about that, I would take like up an hour of
It's okay.
All right. Of all the stuff that's in the
But do they have an actual number of new jobs would be created or an estimate?
Yes, it is. Well, there's a total of 100,000 jobs. Part of that is retaining the jobs that were going to be lost,
Right.
but that's nowhere near that number. I think that's like 11,000 people.
So 89,000 new jobs predominantly in Pennsylvania and Western PA too.
And also in Gary, Indiana.
Gary, Indiana, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So we'll wait for AJ to come back because I want to talk about Biden. But in the meantime, I'll just say one thing about this, and then I'm going to do a little bit of news when he comes back. He's going to tell us about his Biden pieces. It's a huge story, as Selena said in her piece makes clear. It's a huge economic story. It's a huge political story. It's a huge cultural story. But it also is representative of Donald Trump solving a problem that the previous administration was not on track to solve. it's a very good, as best I can tell, it's a very good deal for the United States. And it's the kind of deal that this president said he was going to be able to do, where a lot of complicated issues, a lot of cross currents, and in the end, it's going to be, if they follow through, and a Japanese will, I'm certain, a big investment in the United States. So let me just do some quick headlines, and then we're going to do the Biden story, and then we're going to do the community questions, and then we're going to talk to JC, and then you're going to see Megyn Kelly do her Willy Wonka imitation, all in a very short period of time. Okay. President, as I said, threatened tariffs on the EU and on iPhones today. We'll see if he really follows through. But the word from both the president and the Treasury Secretary are that the negotiations with other countries in the bucket that they want to finish by July are on track to be finished, but that the EU is not. And so we'll see how much that is posturing and how much is real. A district court judge in Massachusetts granted Harvard's request for temporary relief to not have to stop having international students as part of their faculty or part of their student body. Learned today that Premier Xi's daughter goes to Harvard. Maybe everybody else knew that. I did not. And there's some other little things. So let's talk about Joe Biden and AJ, what you wrote. We'll talk a little bit about Joe Biden because we haven't done that in a day. And then and then we'll bring in some questions and we'll talk to JC. AJ, tell folks what you wrote about, what your point of view was on the Biden cancer story and the Biden acuity story.
Yeah, so I will preface this because I've seen many of the same sentiment echoed, some of it in the chat, but on this story of why are we talking about this? This is, old. He should focus on recovery. The guy in the office has dementia. It's nothing compared. This story impacts the United States electorate, right? Whether you like it or not, this story has far-reaching implications in both the present and future of American political discourse. And what it comes down to is two distinct stories that are converging into one. So the first is that, for those, just a small refresher, for those who don't know, back in October of 2023, Biden had a longer interview, about 5 hours, with Special Prosecutor Robert Hur. In the aftermath of the interview, Hur declined to charge or to recommend charges against the president, saying that a jury might find that despite clear violations, both as a senator and vice president, of taking classified material that he's not supposed to and basically stashing it in a wide array of locations, that a jury might find him to just be a well-meaning old man with memory issues. Right? In the aftermath of that, there was a full-on smear campaign against her. And Jake Tapper has recently written a book about the decline and the cover-up of the cognitive decline of the president. The tapes last Friday of the Hur interview leaked. And then 2 days later, on Sunday, the president's family disclosed that on that same day, on that Friday when the tapes leaked, they had discovered that he had late stage 4 cancer. On a scale of 10, 9 out of 10 late stage prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is a very slow moving cancer. According to Ezekiel Emanuel, Rahm Emanuel's brother, who's a notable oncologist, he certainly had this cancer probably when he was elected the first time, when he was elected president back in 2020. So my pieces are my first instinct, and why I started writing the pieces was not, it doesn't add up, right? So two things come about with the cancer diagnosis. The first is how does the most monitored patient with unlimited access to testing and treatable resources, and who's 80 years old and clearly going through some sort of decline, how does he have undetected cancer for years, right? How is that acceptable for the United States president to have that? It impacts us, right? It impacts us that the chief executive.
It's malpractice or a lie. There's no other explanation.
Right. So that's it. It's either malpractice or a lie. Right. So the second is, with the release of the tapes, or with the leak of the tapes, it's very clear that a fraud was perpetrated on the American public. Right. And why should we care about this, both right and left? Is there's a sacred covenant between those who ask for your vote and those and the voters. Right. And that covenant is that it's a social contract. I ask you for your vote, and in turn, for giving me power, I'm going to tell you certain truths, right? And I'm not going to perpetrate a fraud and a lie on you, right? And what's very clear is that a fraud was perpetrated on the American public for years, at least, by the president, by the office of the presidency, facilitated by the media, about the cognitive decline of the president. And the question is, did that stop at just the cognitive, or did it include as well the cover up of potential cancer?
Right. So, AJ, I'm going to ask you two questions, and then I'm going to throw it open to the other three to say what they wish. First is, what's the name of your Substack so people can subscribe?
It's No BS Politics. And I named it that just quick. I named it that because as an Israeli athlete, I'm very, very, I hold very firm to not taking political positions on things like abortion or hot button issues, because I'm a representative of the state of Israel. So I try to look at everything from a very holistic political analysis.
Okay. Second, and this is what the point I've been driving home all week. It did not take the new book or anything else to see Joe Biden's cognitive decline. There's no cover up. It was on C-SPAN. So were you saying this in 2020 as Tom Cotton was and I was, or did you not believe your own eyes until the book came out and until you heard her audio tapes?
Right. So I noticed it in 2020. He clearly was not the same. I mean, I think cognitive decline is a little subjective when you're not in the room and testing the person. But if you took a look at who he was in 2012 versus who he was in 2020, two very completely different people.
But let me sharpen it though. Let me sharpen it though. Some people, no one could deny he was diminished. But the question is, did you reach the judgment in 2020 or 2021 that he was too diminished to do the job, or you weren't sure?
Absolutely.
You did.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it was, and there was also a clear pattern of hiding the president from the public.
Right.
And that itself is quite alarming.
Right. Okay. Open it up to JC and Selena and Ryan. Anything you guys want to either ask or say?
Can I just say one quick thing? I think that my grandfather had Lewy body's dementia. I was with him until the day he died. I took care of him. And there were many, many moments in Joe Biden's presidency where I saw my grandfather at the very end of his life, like the same, to the point that I have to turn this man off. I can't look at him because it is a clear reminder of someone in end stage life. I'm not saying he has that disease, but the similarities and a lot of things that happened were there. Mark, you reported, I texted you about this a couple of days ago, and you reported, I think a week or two ago, that there is questions over the wealth of the Biden family. And clearly the Biden family depends on access to power to make money. And you see this sometimes in celebrities or in athletes where one person subsidizes the lifestyle of dozens of people to the point that they become bankrupt and exhausted the family wealth.
It's the whole plot of the HBO show Entourage.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I cannot help but think, and I asked this in the interview for my podcast that comes out on Monday, was the reason that Hunter and the brother and the wife and the immediate family, and I'm sorry, the immediate circle, was their willingness to make Joe Biden work to the point of a very bad prognosis because they have no other engine to make money. And this is also what I think part of the thing about Bo and the legacy of Bo. Yes, he was a nice person and he had a good family and he died too young, but was he supposed to be that vehicle to provide them access to power?
Yeah.
Because it seems very obvious to me, and maybe it's just a conspiracy theory, but it seems obvious to me that is how that family makes money. And if they're struggling financially now, Biden's paintings aren't selling, the family doesn't have access to oligarchs in the Ukraine, it is of the utmost importance to keep him moving. That's why he got a talent agent, both when he left the vice presidency and at 82 years old when he left the presidency. He went to CIA banking for an
I don't think it requires speculation because we know enough about how his brothers and his son made their money and how their grandchildren enjoyed perks to know that they were derivative of his power.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the market's quite clear. Selena or JC, anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, I noted it in April of 2019. He came to Pittsburgh and kicked off his presidential election at the Teamster Hall on Butler Street. And I noted at the time that he seemed off. something seemed off. And you know, I wasn't sure what it was, but he certainly wasn't who he was. I've covered Biden for decades. He always referred to himself as the third senator from Pennsylvania. Spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania. I think that's why, in part, why he did a little bit better than Hillary in 2020, because he spent so much time there and developed relationships with rank and file. But I noted it at the time in 2019, wrote about it several times, but you know, people just dismissed it. Oh, you're conservative, therefore it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Dan, welcome in. We're going to get at least you in tonight because we've got other stuff to do. Breaking format just a bit. Dan, welcome in. Thanks for joining. Where are you in New Hampshire?
Nashua, New Hampshire.
Nashua. Beautiful place, Nashua. Thank you for joining. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to talk with Selena about the U.S. Steel. The remarkable issue is that the Democrats were working with the United Steelworkers National Union to oppose.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the locals
Yeah.
that actually represent the employees
Yeah.
wanted the deal to go through.
Yeah.
And so the Republicans are working with the locals.
Yep.
And there's the fracture.
Yeah. That's really, really important. I think oftentimes reporters don't understand that when the international or the national comes out and makes a statement, they're very, very disconnected from the rank and file. The rank and file are usually live right by the plant, or you know, whatever it is, whether it's a car plant or a steel plant, whatever it is, right? They live there. That's their community. They want it to prosper. Where the international or national leadership usually lives in a far off place in a gated community and has no cultural or traditional connection with the people that work at the plants. And you nailed it. That was the thing that McCall, who's the head of the international, is in Cleveland. He wanted the Cleveland guy to get it. Lorenzo, I'm going to forget his last name, of Cleveland Cliffs.
Right.
That was his guy,
Yeah.
and wanted nothing to do with this Nippon deal. Meanwhile, at this time, when this is happening, all these Cleveland Cliff mills are closing.
Yep.
Right? So you know, it was really smart. And a lot of politicians don't get this, but it's not the leadership of at the up, you know, top of the heap. It's the guys and the men and women who are getting their fingernails dirty and working in these places that are the ones you listen to, and that's what Trump did.
Yeah, Dan, thank you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dan. Finish up. I apologize. You unmute again. I apologize. If you're able to unmute. All right, Dan, thank you. All right. Again, we're breaking format a little bit just because I want to go back to JC and talk about Commit Foundation, and then ask AJ and Selena and Ryan to ask JC what you'd wish or comment. Just a few more facts. You're a nonprofit. You're a foundation. What's your annual budget?
We're operating at around 3.8 million right now.
And where does that come from?
So we've been very, very fortunate that there have been some large grants from foundations that have seen the goodness in what we're trying to do. We have a couple of individual donors. We have a great board. 82% of everything that we raise goes into program. We actually run very lean for that kind of a budget. We're under 13 folks. And most of our folks are, you know, we're hiring out for the coaches so that they get ICF coaches, and we're hosting workshops. We have a couple of corporate partners that help us as well.
And how many people do you help a year in the 5 countries?
Yeah, so we are on track right now to help 2,000 this year. And when you think about it, what I want to be able to do is help 20,000.
Yeah.
What I want to raise this year is about $5 million, so we can continue to, if we just look at the US alone, 200,000 people are leaving service every single year. And we're, you know, 0.5%. We have to be able to do better than that. And we're the only organization of our type that really assists with this. This isn't about helping folks find jobs. Actually, veterans do very, very well in finding jobs. Their job numbers are actually good,
Yep.
except they have the highest underemployment rate of any demographic there is.
Right.
And while we are not a suicide prevention or suicide intervention, I can personally tell you that, yeah, 20 years, 11 combat tours, I also have 4 suicide attempts. And it was because I did not know my identity. I didn't know what my purpose was. I ran away from my community. I wanted to prove that I could succeed outside of the gun club, as we call it, right? So I did what all special operators do. I wrote books and started a coffee company. And the problem was, like, I didn't know who I was. I went from role to role as opposed to who am I as a person? Who am I? What's important to me? How do I fill my cup? I was chasing happiness instead of finding joy. And so I think what we have to do, and I'm anxious to talk to the DoD, because I think if they would pilot our program, what the DoD does right now with the Department of Labor is military transition theory, right? So how do you get your disability? How do you get your retirement? How do you get your ID card? All those are systemic issues. The issue is an individual issue. And being able to meet people where they are and help them think about what they can do, what's out there, what's possible. It's just such an important thing. And there are no resources that can do that. And we can do that for, less than half of what we actually, and I'll just give you this, because I think it's an important thing. When somebody comes into the military, we spend a minimum of 8 weeks. That's the shortest basic training, and a minimum of $55,000 to turn somebody into a warrior. Keeping in mind that 50% of those that start that process don't make it to the end of their first enlistment. And we spend $800 in 2 days on the back end. And for less than half of the $55,000, we can actually help them, be contributing citizens in the country.
And we owe them that. What can members of our community do to help you in your community?
So a couple of things. Commitfoundation.org is where you can obviously make a donation. We have a really big campaign. We've never done it before, but for the 4th of July, we're asking that people have patriotism with a purpose, right? This is investing in our community, is investing in the future of America. And we would love for people to give during the 4th of July. Nobody else asks for money. We are going to ask. But if you can't give money, hey, get on there, send a note. Hey, I'd like to be a mentor. I'd like to be a connector. I'd like to open up my network to people. Hey, we're all over the country now. We're all over the world. We do workshops. We just got back from Denver. We were in Seattle. We're going to be in Baltimore. We're going to be in New York City. If you're interested in seeing what we do, please, I want you to come. I want you to meet these incredible men and women who continue to want to serve their nation. They continue to want to serve their communities. And they've already been part of that 1% that's raised their hand and said, I will serve, send me. Well, why would we throw that away after their time in uniform was done?
Yeah. AJ, any question you want to ask or comment you want to make?
No, I'm wholly supportive of it. I don't want to take up people's time. I think it's a great mission.
Okay. Selena, anything you want to say or ask?
This is really great. I covered the military from 2001 all the way through the end of both wars. And a lot of the coverage included talking to veterans as they came home and looking for purpose and trying to find that purpose. And so hearing you talk about this, I've seen veterans start small businesses. I've seen them work with young people. I've seen them go into service in being in public service officers or police officers, and finding that fulfillment that they lost. And that's a really hard, as you point out, that's a really hard transition to make, because it's not just about finding a job, it's about finding purpose, right? Because that's what you're mentally and emotionally trained to do. And so I want to talk to you after the show, because I'm really excited about what you're doing.
We'll connect you.
I would love that. And just to that point, I think it's really interesting. We just did the math. Every dollar put into veteran transition is a potential $4 return on investment into the economy.
Right.
It's really amazing.
So again,
Yep.
it's commitfoundation.org. And what I'd like to do is let's work together. Let's have you come back whenever, maybe around July 4th. Bring one or two examples of folks you've helped. Let's let them tell their stories and how they helped. And let's do like a Jerry Lewis style telethon on two-way and raise you some money and create some content for you that you can use on your website and social. And let's plan on that. Again, commitfoundation.org, and very grateful to you for doing what you're doing. I worked for a time with an organization here in New York. I don't want people to overread the metaphor, but I worked with folks who'd been incarcerated for long periods of time, 20, 30, 40 years. And it's the same thing. You come out and they give you a little bit of help, but it's the practical thing of getting a job, but it's the dealing with the new reality where the life you've known and the things that have caused you to react and function and stay alive are all different.
I would love to talk to those people that you worked with, because our system, which is founded in evidence, it's evidence-based and it's research-based, will absolutely work.
Yeah.
For
Look, I'll take you up there on a Thursday night. It's called the Fortune Society. It's an incredible group. The story that I bet has some resonance with you. A guy who'd been incarcerated for 30 or 40 years, I forget, went to the supermarket. When he went in, there were, you go to the supermarket, there's like 20 cereals. He went to the supermarket, there were 50 cereals, 80 cereal boxes, and he just couldn't handle the dissonance of just such a changed reality. And it's the same when folks come back from serving. It's just, there's so many things that are different, and the tempo and the cadence and the intensity is just all scrambled. Grateful to you, and our folks will talk to you about connecting you to Selena and about coming back with some folks you've helped from the U.S. and elsewhere, whoever you wish. Okay. Lastly, and thanks to all, you all can stay and watch Megyn Kelly if you wish, but thank you, AJ and JC and Selena and Ryan. If you haven't sampled my new show on the Megyn Kelly Network, next up, I'd urge you to do it. And this episode you might like in particular, I got to talk to Megyn Kelly. It's on her network, and she came on my show as a guest. And we talked about her interview with Jake Tapper. We talked about what makes a good TV producer, and a bunch of other stuff. But I asked her what her favorite movie is, and I did not know the answer. But here's Megyn Kelly talking about her favorite movie.
What is the greatest movie of all time?
I mean, are we talking my favorite or just definitively the greatest movie?
Your greatest for you. What is your
my
favorite
movie of all time is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
The original. The original.
I'm obsessed. I've never even seen The Imitations. I refuse.
Yeah. How are you in imitating the Wonka in the final scene, near the final scene, when Charlie walks in and he says, "Good day, sir"? Can you do that?
He says, "You bumped into the ceiling, which now has to be cleaned and sterilized, so you get nothing. You lose."
He says,
and also,
"Good day.
So shines a good deed
day.
in a weary world."
Yeah.
That's a sweet moment.
Are you so in love with that movie that you can differentiate between the Oompa Loompas, or they're all pretty much the same?
I can differentiate. I've actually spoken with one of the Oompa Loompas, if you must know, and I watched the whole movie 4 years ago.
All right. Again, never said on this platform, I can differentiate between the Oompa Loompas. There's more to the interview, including her talking about the places she wished she'd visit, the people she'd most like to meet. Again, you can listen to it on his podcast, or you can go to the Next Up YouTube channel and watch it there. And again, I'd welcome your feedback if you watch it on the program. It's every Tuesdays and Thursdays, in addition, of course, to my work here on Two Way. Grateful to you all. This is a very intense week with a lot of big news and a lot of great guests and a lot of great community questions. Very grateful to you all. Next week, I'll remind you, Monday, there's no morning meeting because of the holiday. Monday night, there is a Two-Way tonight at 6 Eastern time that will stream on YouTube, which we recorded actually earlier today, talking about the 2028 presidential campaign. It was a great conversation. I can give you your full money back if you don't like it. So you can watch that Monday night. And then Tuesday, back to the regular schedule. And of course, next week, in addition to Meghan McCain and Michael Moynihan and Ethan Strauss and Bridget Fedesi, the introduction next Thursday of our newest show, the group chat. So lots to watch, and we'll be sending you reminders and information about how to watch it all as this platform grows. And there are 3 more shows coming soon that I think you'll like quite a bit. So we're grateful to you for being part of Two-Way. And as I've said, not everybody will like every show, but I'd urge you to at least sample them because we take great care in who we bring in to work with us. And that's why they're so outstanding, because we know we want to work with really quality people who we think will appeal to you, and all of whom have great respect and appreciation for this platform, which is ironic because we only took 1 question tonight, which is unusual, but we had 4 great guests and complicated topics, so we did it that way. Thank you all. Have a great holiday weekend. Remember to be properly contemplative on Memorial Day, and I will see you on tape Monday night and then live 9 a.m. Tuesday, Dan and the return of Sean Tuesday morning. Have a great weekend. And again, thank you for watching. Let's go Knicks.